everyone. Woo! Welcome to Create Talks. I have my favorite guest of all time, my honey, Kevin Dedmon. And we are so excited. We are talking about the power of what can happen when we take our dream, which is to create, and we build a container and we start to move forward into that dream. And his story is amazing. We're going to talk about how he began his journey in writing. And just a quick thing that people need to know about is that we have a supernatural writing intensive coming up. So whatever you're doing, you got to sign up. We have an early bird special, which is if you put in the code early bird when you register, you get a certain discount off. And that's until January 15th, which is in a couple days. Now, this writing intensive on February 5th and 6th is fully recorded. So if you can't make it during that time, you can listen to it later. But it's got Brian Simmons, my honey.
I'm going to be there.
Myself, Jen Miskoff, and Tanasha LeRae. So you can check all that out on theresadedmon.com/intensive to learn more, to find out the schedule, what we're doing, and to register. But don't forget to do it before the 15th, because then you get a discount. I love discounts.
And remember, the early bird gets the worm, but in this case, the early bird gets the word.
Totally. In the beginning, God created John 1:1. But Kevin, I'm going to have you start to share about your journey. Like, why did you write? What was your journey of becoming a writer?
Well, I think the thing that really impassioned me to start writing was basically I just wanted to leave a legacy of what God had been doing in my life. And so I just started writing my testimony and what God had shown me to do in terms of treasure hunting and how that had worked out in my life. And this was back in 2004, 2005. And so I just started writing little things like that to leave a legacy for my grandchildren one day. And then Chris Valentin looked at what I had written and he's like, you need to send this in. This is publishable. And I thought, this is really crazy because I have never been able to, I've never thought I was a writer. I thought, I was going to basically work for the sanitation department, driving a garbage truck or something like that for the rest of my life, because that's what my high school counselor told me that I should do. I shouldn't even go to get a college degree. I wasn't smart enough. I just wasn't acclimated to the academia world. And so a BA degree later and a master's degree later.
With a great GPA.
Yes, I got 1 B in my entire 6 years of college.
We could tell you the stories on that.
But I didn't think I would ever have anything to write, let alone anybody would want to read what I've written. And so I just was writing for myself, and I was writing out of passion.
Yeah.
And then it became something, and then it went viral. And The Ultimate Treasure Hunt, my first book, is translated into, I can't even keep track of all the languages. And people now have read my book, but they don't even know who I am. And they're doing treasure hunts all over the world and leading people to Jesus. And they don't even know that I created the whole thing, just because it's gone so viral. And like treasure hunting is almost like Kleenex. Who invented Kleenex? But that's the power of writing. And so I really found that I could change culture. I could change the world in some way if I would write what God was putting in my heart.
And you started on that journey, but then you did Unlocking Heaven. There were other books that you began to write.
Yeah, lots.
And then also Fire Starters, which you can look at on kevindedmon.com. You can look at all of these resources that he has. But in that process, it's like you started to develop your own style as a writer.
Yeah, what I found was that I would actually write as though I was speaking to people. And like if I was speaking to a crowd or individually, I would act like I was actually passionately giving a message. And so I would write all that down, and then I would go back and tweak it. And Theresa knows I love alliteration.
He does.
I love, it's kind of almost like a poetic thing that I have. I love making words sound similar. And I like to write a sentence where it like really flows well off the tongue as you're reading it out loud, or even in your own head voice. And so, so I go through my own editing process. I usually write down my passion first, and then I start editing it to make it more palatable, more readable. And also, like, there are some techniques that I've used as well that has really helped me, and that is I have in fact, on your computer you have a tool where you can measure like what grade level you're writing at. And so at first I was writing at a college level, and I was doing research one day and I realized, oh, most people read at about a 7th grade level. And so I decided I was going to go for 9th grade. And so that's the way I write. I write at a 9th grade level. I try to use smaller words, words that are more common, but yet try to push the envelope a little bit more, but not to bore people with technical kinds of, wording. Like my book Gnosticized is pretty technical.
It is.
And like in that book, I'm using terms like, premillennial, dispensational, cessationistic eschatology.
Which I'm sure a lot of you have no idea what that even means. You need to get the book. But part of our heart is for you to hear Kevin's journey in the Writer's Intensive about how he wrote his book, about how he can help you. It's like these little pointers, like read and start to because reading is important if you want to become a great writer, but also what level are you called to reach, but who is your audience? I mean, Kevin was really writing the Gnosticized book to a totally different audience than he did to Treasure Hunt. So it's knowing your audience. Those tips we're going to give you at the Writer's Intensive. But I have a question for you, Kevin. Where did you and I know with your first book, how did you finish that? What was your process? Because a lot of us out there now, I'm sure we all raise your hands, how many of you have projects in creativity in any form that you haven't completed? Lots of us, right? And so there's something about here you were, you didn't have your strength as a writer yet, knowing yourself as a writer. How did you overcome that to become a very well-read author?
Well, let me first of all say that I learned how to write by reading How to Read a Book by Jay Adler. And that book helped me then to understand how to get the most out of somebody's writings. And so as I learned how to read a book better, because I didn't know how to read a book really, I'd get bored, I'd fall asleep. And then I learned how to actively read, and it changed the game for me. And so as I was writing then, I made sure that I was incorporating all of these elements in my writing so that when people were reading, they would get the most out of my stuff. So the other thing for me, like in terms of finishing books, I don't write from perspiration. I write from inspiration. Ooh. It's just the way I work. Some people, at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, I'm going to write for an hour and 15 minutes, and I'm just going to write away. Some people will go away for a weekend and write a book. I don't work that way. I work, when I feel inspired. And so if I'm not feeling inspired, I'll go for a run, I'll go for a bike ride, I'll jump in the pool, I'll do something to change the rhythm of everything. And oftentimes what I find is when I'm recreating, I'm recreating, and I'm actually then coming back with fresh inspiration. So for me, finishing the book has more to do with inspiration than perspiration. And so first of all, in that inspiration, for me, I have to have a passion for what I'm writing about. And that usually is a passion that's already borne out in my experience. So I'm not writing about theory. I'm writing from my own personal experience. And so for me, finishing the book has to do with what's motivating me, and that's passion. And the second thing for me is before I actually start a book, I actually finish the book before I start it. Ooh. So in any good, when you're reading, maybe not a fictional novel, but a normal, like a teaching book or whatever, you kind of want to read the end before you read the beginning. You want to read the table of contents. So I write from the point that I already know how it's going to end. I know how I want to end it. I know how I want to begin it. And so I develop an outline. And so for me, what helps me to finish my project in and continued inspiration is that I already have a structure, an outline of what I'm going to do before I ever start. So I'm not writing just randomly. I know where I'm at. I know how many words I want in each chapter. I know how many words I want in each section and each paragraph, pretty much. Like it's so I'm writing, sort of filling in the blanks,
It's
which
so
makes it a
cool.
lot easier.
And you know, everybody has to find their rhythm. Everybody has to find out what inspires them. And part of what we sometimes do is we think it has to be a certain way. So I love how you dived into the fact of sometimes it's in those spaces. You know, when you read a sentence and then you have an exclamation point or you have a space in between, it lets the reader breathe or feel the emotion for the next thing. And so for us, a lot of times we feel like we have to get things done without letting the spaces in our brain really acclimate to hear from a different perspective. Through prayer, it could be, for me, it's really taking time to pray or taking time to look at it a different way. Sometimes movies inspire me, or taking a walk with my honey or with the Lord. All of that stuff is a space for God to speak or for God to meet me or for me to be inspired in a different way. So finding what works for you is super important, but make sure that you don't put it off. Make sure that you take the time to not only feel inspired, but to not let defeating mindsets keep you from really doing what you're called to be. So for Kevin could have thought, oh, I'm not really qualified. How can I do that? But because of, again, Chris Valentin's word, it inspired them. We all need people that, like, oh my gosh, the people in my life that have helped me to become a better writer, Kevin, others, those kinds of people you need in your life. That's why the writer's intensive or doing a small group together to write or to create in any way helps us to be inspired. Don't you think?
I do. I absolutely do. On that note, my second book, Unlocking Heaven, which is a lifestyle of supernatural living, and the publisher wanted me to get this book done really quick because Treasure Hunt had gone so viral, and so they gave me a deadline, and I blocked up. I couldn't come up with, like, it wasn't flowing well. And so I called them and I said, listen, do you want a good book or do you want a great book? And they're like, well, we want a great book, but we need it by this date. I said, okay, well then let's cancel the contract and let's not go forward with the book, because I am not going to just put out something to meet a deadline. This has got to be like something that's representing who I am and the excellence that I carry. And then they're like, well, okay, all right. And then it was interesting. After they dropped the deadline for me, I finished the book so quick before their deadline.
Yeah.
But for me, I cannot work on those kind of deadline things. And so even when I was mentioning like the structure, I know how many words I want.
Totally.
That's general. Like,
Right.
I generally know how many words I want. I know how long a paragraph should be for me and how long a section should be. But if it goes a little longer or shorter, it's not, oh no, I got to stick to the structure. So for me, in my temperament and my ADHD background, like, I write better in spurts rather than just long-term enduring marathons of writing. So I'm better off writing like 20 minutes here, 40 minutes there, throughout the day.
Totally.
And so,
and I'm different. I like to take a block of time, dive into it, done it. Now I can play. So you have to find your rhythm. You have to find out what works for you. But one of the things that Kevin and I believe that I wanted Kevin to hit on is, why is writing so important now? Like, we all are facing many different issues in our culture and many different things that are, in a sense, like bringing about fear and anxiety and things that kind of are brooding inside of the soul of people that hasn't yet been, I would say, brought into in a sense, like wholeness and healing and freedom and a way out. I feel like I feel so funny. I feel like we're in this like cave buried deep in this mine, still trying to find our way out because of all the things that have happened because of the pandemic and other things. But why is writing such an important aspect of creativity that people need to not put a pause button on, but consider now?
Well, I mean, if we look out throughout history, like look at all the cultures who have burned books because they're afraid of those books.
Totally.
Today, I mean, people are being canceled because of what they're writing, which indicates the fact that what they're writing is very powerful. And the power of that writing can either be used for evil or good. And it can either inspire people and motivate people to greatness, or it could tear people down and bring hopelessness into people's lives. So writing, it is still today mightier than the sword. And the reason why Facebook wants to ban people and Twitter and YouTube and whatever is because media still is more powerful than armies. With guns and with tanks and nuclear weapons or whatever. I mean, the narrative that we get to spin through writing can influence cultures. I mean, look at it now, and you've got these big tech companies and they're spinning narratives, and they won't let anybody else speak into that because they know the power of our words. And so we have a chance to change culture. We have a chance to transform people's lives.
Yes.
And so this is I mean, the Holy Spirit saw fit to write down the essentials that we need for our Christian faith. I mean, thank God, for God, being into writing and knowing how significant writing is. I mean, having the Bible and then the printing press. I mean, over in China, for example, they'll take one little page of the Bible and they'll pass it on, but only after they've memorized the whole thing. And so we have to understand that part of, God's plan of making disciples, through the whole earth and every nation, writing is a huge part of that. And not only that, you forget 92% of what you hear, I think it is.
That's right.
But you remember like 60-some% of what you read.
Exactly.
And so that's why reading is so important. That's why writing is so important, because it sticks with people.
Yeah.
And the more illustrative you can get in your writing, the more you can write in picture form, the more they'll remember it. And so that's why for me, I try to write in more of like my style of poetic, like using alliteration, using word pictures, metaphors, similes, giving people a picture of what of what's possible. It's like when I golf and here I'm using a little illustration already here to drive home this point, but when I golf, and I come to a water hole, I don't I don't want to hit the water. I don't want to hit into the water, because every time pretty much I'll hit into the water. And what I do is I focus, I envision the green, I envision the fairway, and that's what I'm aiming for. And that's what we do with writing. We actually give people a picture when we're writing of what they can aim for.
And I think one of the beauties of the writers and the people that are creators out there is there's so many different writing styles that are needed in this day. We need the bloggers. We need those that are doing Instagram posts and putting that one word with that picture or that photo. We need people that are going to do curriculum and teach about what it means to have kingdom values. We need to have people that are doing children's books. We need people that are going to be influencing the next generation, teens. There's so many different genres of fiction, nonfiction. How did C.S. Lewis get inspired? It was with J.R. Tolkien in writing books that captured me when I was a kid. And that's the power of what can happen. We need to be thinking through right now, what do we want the world to look like? And through words, we create worlds that transform history.
Yes.
And the only way, I would say, the only way that you can ever know your own voice or style is to do it. There's no other way. And then to have small groups like at the Writers Intensive, where you can practice and you can talk about that. That's the power of what you have, because like you could be reaching a certain genre that Bill Johnson could never reach. You could be reaching through rap music, through kingdom things, by writing that no one else can reach. And so I just want to take off the box of saying that a writer means that you have to write a 500-page fiction. That's not the case. Writing is so diversified now, and we need you.
Yeah, I think the other thing for me in my latest book, the one I just finished just a year ago, Gnosticized, and it's the journey of the development of Gnosticism from the Garden of Eden through Judaism, Platoism, Judaism, Christianity, and then the apostles fought against it in the early church, finally assimilated it in many ways, and I show how it all got assimilated into the church through the centuries. And so I wrote this. It took me 15 years of research on this topic. And finally I wrote this manuscript, and I gave it to somebody to just look over my grammar and stuff like that. And she sent it back to me and she said, "Kevin, this is amazing, but unfortunately, I don't think anybody's going to read it because it's way too technical. It's too boring." And I was motivated to read it, she said, because I was checking everything. And she said, "I almost didn't make it all the way through." And so instead of just saying, "Well, that's just because you don't understand the topic and, this is more of an academic thing," I went home and I'm like, "Okay, Lord, you have to help me here. You have to help me to figure out how to communicate this thing." And so I had already finished the book. I was getting ready to publish the thing. And then I said, "Okay, I'm not going to do this. I respect this other person's input enough." And Theresa's input, by the way.
I told him, make it into a play.
So I woke up one morning and God gave me this idea to make it into like a Shakespearean play.
Yeah.
And so I rewrote the whole thing with a judge, with a prosecuting attorney, with a defense attorney, with 12 jurors. And I made all these 12 jurors have their own personalities, and, there's humor in it. And then I bring all of these historical figures like Plato and the Apostle Paul, the Apostle John, and Tertullian, and Clement and Augustine and Luther and Calvin, and all the way down. And I bring them up to the stand and I question them, and then they answer in the quotes that I had in the other way I wrote it. So now it's like you could actually, you can picture everything happening in a courtroom, and it's just so cool because you're reading it like it's fiction, but it's fact. And so it helps you to get through the whole thing and remember what it's all about, and it helps you read through it.
Yeah, so, you should definitely get the book.
It's really genius.
I think it's so funny, the process of writing and the process of what happens, because many people carry your baby, like what happened when he allowed one of the people to edit his book, and how she commented on something that she could change. When I'm just finishing my my art and poetry book called Created to Overcome, an interactive journey of the heart through art and poetry. And there were 5 or 6 times when somebody said, "Theresa, you should have 30 poems, so it could be like a 30-day journal kind of stuff." And I'm going, heck, I'm so tired. I've already written 26. Like, what? No. And then I was only going to do 5 journal entries for people to put after each chapter. And then I did 30 journal entries so that people could really talk about their own heart journey through art or poetry or any kind of creative form. And it evolved. And there's something about taking what you are learning and not holding on to it so tightly that you don't allow others to see that, whether that's art or writing or music or dance, whatever you're into. But there's something about allowing others to touch that and to feel it and to try it on for size that helps you to become a better creative. And that part means like we have to be secure that it's okay if it's changed. Like many times mine was changed, many times Kevin's was changed. And that's just part of the process of creativity.
So for the most part, I do my own editing. Like I don't have an editor. I tweak my own. I'm on like the continual improvement plan. So I'm on Kaizen, which is a Japanese term
So true.
it's continual improvement. And so when I'm done, it's like,
Yeah.
and then I know I've looked at every sentence sideways, backwards, inside out, and I've really, worked it out. But sometimes you need other eyes, and I always get opinions from other people though. I'll have them read a section or whatever, and Teresa's helped me so much early on. Like I was just writing basically thesis statements, like propositions, and she was like, Kevin, you really need some stories in here, and then you need some like testimonies, and then some analogies as well, and like use your humor, and like, yeah, that's right. And I didn't even really think about that. I was like, okay, well, just write down the principles, and do that. Now Bill Johnson does that a lot, and he can get away with it because the guy's
Totally.
like Solomon,
Yeah,
but for the rest of us, we've got maybe a few of those statements for the whole book, and then we've got to amplify them, which is also really, really good and helpful. And so it's just important that we make our writing not only readable for people, but also being able to communicate the creativity through the creativity that God's given us. And so
cool. If you could say one thing to people that want to write a book or write something, a blog, poetry, whatever it is that you have a heart for, what would you say to them?
Oh, I would say write from your heart, write from your passion. And whenever you're writing from your passion, it's going to come through to people. And so that's why for me, like speaking, like writing as though I'm speaking to somebody, and actually visualizing the people I'm speaking to, the audience, and communicating my heart, not just my mind.
Yeah, one of my favorite movies, and I know it's a great book too, is Anne of Green Gables. And in that story, Anne wants to become this famous writer, and so she has all this illustrious characters that seem so far-fetched because they're not in her lane, and she's just writing about make-believe. And this person who really loves her says, why don't you write about the things that you know? And that's what Kevin is talking about. We talked about at the beginning, writing about things that touch your heart, that you have experience in. I mean, some of the best things that Kevin has ever written has been from his experiences, because he's such a great testimony and a word person in story. And so sticking with what you do well, but sticking with what you know is super important. Like all the history that you had to do with studying things for Gnosticism, that stuff he could drop in from those experiences and then create an objective kind of understanding of how we have been influenced by the Gnostic thought. And that's a huge thing in our culture that a lot of you and I face, of not feeling good enough, feeling shame if we want to pursue our dream too, right? That's all from Gnosticism, from the belief that what we create is not good enough. You need to get his book. Go to kevindedmon.com, check out his resources, because those things will change your life. I'd love for you to impart, and if you have any words of knowledge for people as well, this is our time. And again, you can share this with people, this post, because if there's somebody that we call out that that needs to do this, please share this so that their destiny gets fulfilled. But go ahead, hon.
Well, I just released the courage to enter into the race, to enter into the process, and then the wisdom to seek out tools, to seek out resources that'll help you to get across the finish line into your writing destiny. And that you won't consider yourself what would I say, non-essential to this move. You are essential to this move. You're part of our revivolution, as I would call it.
Come on.
And God has put a thought in your head. He's put passion in your heart. And I just release an impartation to go with what moves you, because that will move others. And so yeah, I just say, not only will you have the courage and the wisdom, but also then the favor in your publishing and your distribution to get as many people as possible to read what Holy Spirit is specifically and uniquely speaking through you. In Jesus' name.
Amen. Woo, that was hot stuff. That was amazing. I felt like I saw three names, by the way. I saw a person whose name was Doug, and a person whose name was Philip, and I heard the word Mary, like those three. So if you know of those people, please share this with them. I felt like a lot of them had been discouraged because they felt like what they had kind of died. Their dream, like they hadn't been able to pursue their dream or pursue what they really wanted to do, and they were kind of on this fence of kind of just like almost putting it underneath the coffee table so you can't see it, and not going there, and kind of, that was a nice thought, but I'm not going to do that. And I feel like God's reawakening dreams in you to pursue this dream that seemed to be lost. So I feel like that's for some of you.
Yeah, well, when you were saying Doug, as soon as you said Doug, I heard done.
Ooh.
And it's interesting what you were just saying, because I felt like actually there's people out there who like, I'm done. I'm not going to write anymore. I'm not going to take any more risk. What I've written hasn't, succeeded so far. I just want to encourage you that God has a plan and a purpose for your creative expression. And he wants to use your voice in writing as well as just verbally. And I want to encourage you that you can learn. If I can learn, you can learn.
And if I can learn,
yes.
You can learn.
Yes. And so I really do feel like maybe it's for Doug, Mary, and whoever else you said, Philip, maybe the three of you that are out there, you needed an encouraging word today that it's not done. It's not over.
Come on.
That actually you're just on your part of the journey. Like it's okay. It's okay to like write 50 things and it doesn't work out. Like the public isn't seeing it. You're writing for yourself.
Yeah.
If you're writing for you, then you're okay. And if you're okay, everybody else will be okay. And God wants to use you more than you want to be used. And he'll give you Holy Spirit wisdom. Sometimes people have things that they've written and it's not going to be released for 5 years or 3 years, whatever. And you've just got to keep plodding away. I mean, how many testimonies are there of people who've gone to publisher after publisher after publisher? No. Yes. And it becomes a worldwide bestseller.
Yeah.
And not that I even think that you have to have a publisher to have a worldwide bestseller. No, not at all, especially in today's market.
Oh yeah.
So, just don't give up. You're not done.
Woo! I love that. Well, guys, as you know, I love to continue to help you to create. You can go to theresadedmon.com, see about my wonderful community that I have through my Create Academy. And we have a monthly subscription. We would love to have you join.
Yeah.
I'm with my students every week going through my courses. We're just starting a new course, Create 28, this next week. And don't forget the Writers Intensive. Go again to theresadedmon.com/intensive to learn more, because we have an early bird special. The code is early bird. So you press, you go ahead and say the discount, put early bird, and you can get a discount before the 15th of this month. So I will see you then. Have an incredible week. Thanks, Kevin, for joining. Mwah. And we'll see you next week. Remember, you're born to create. See you then. Bye.